How are you all going? Back with Jono for another quick math lesson. Today we're going to look at how to convert speeds from kilometers per hour to meters per second. This is a really important skill in kind of real life because it helps us compare things over different distances. So it's something that, having a shortcut for could be really helpful. And that's what we're going to get to. So the major thing that we've got to be able to do, the big skill, is we need to know how to convert from kilometers to meters. So the different distances and how to interchange between those two, and how to turn an hour into seconds. So we're going to look at the actual maths behind this first, and then we're going to look at a really quick shortcut that you can just do kind of in your head to give you a guess if in the real world, if you don't want to use your calculator. Okay? So this example, we're going at 80 kilometers per hour. So just imagine you're in the car with your parents driving at 80 kilometers per hour. Kind of think about how many meters per second that would be. It is a little bit difficult to kind of visualize it. What we need to do is kind of understand what we're actually saying if we need to convert this into meters per second. So 80 kilometers per hour, another way to write that is 80 kilometers divided by 1 hour. Okay, because it's 1 hour, we never write that when we're talking about at 80 kilometers, but this is the kind of more mathematically correct sentence. So to change kilometers into meters, because that's what we're trying to do, we're trying to change kilometers into meters. We know that there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer, so that top bit, we need to go 80 kilometers multiplied by 1,000. That's going to give us meters on the top there. And what we've also got to do is change the hours into seconds. So 1 hour has 60 minutes. So we've got to times that 1 hour by 60. But we don't want minutes, we want seconds. So now we've got to times that 60 by 60 again. So we've got by 60 again. So now we've got meters at the top because we've got 80 kilometers times by 1,000 is giving us how many meters we travel. And down the bottom there, instead of hours, we've converted this to seconds. I'm not expecting you to do this maths in your head. Just type it into your calculator, and that gives us 22.22. And that answer is in meters per second. So that's our final answer. But we could be asked to go the other way. So you could have 7 meters per second, and I'd like to know how fast that's moving in kilometers per hour. So this time we've got to do the exact opposite thing. So if we've got 7 meters, to turn that into kilometers, instead of multiplying by 1,000, I'm going to have to divide by 1,000. So this is the same as writing 7 divided by 1,000. Now we're in kilometers. And then we've got 1 second on the bottom. And now to turn that 1 second into how many hours, we've got to divide by 60, which will turn it into minutes, and then divide by 60 again. And now we've got hours. So this is in our correct form. If you type that into your calculator, that gives us 25.2, and that is kilometers per hour. So this is a lot of work, okay? We've got to make sure we've got our fractions and all of that, but there is a nice shortcut, and we're going to go through that now. So in both of these, we're putting 1,000 at the top. We're either multiplying by 1,000 or dividing by 1,000. And on the bottom, we are technically putting in 3,600, which is 60 by 60. So if you cancel these two things, because they're on the top and the bottom of a fraction, right, it ends up with 3.6 because I get rid of all these zeros. So that means in real life, we can just use this 3.6 number, all right? So the 80 kilometers per hour divided by 3.6 gives us, in our calculator, 22.22. And this is in meters per second. That's way easier than writing out all the unit conversions in a fraction, but you do just have to remember that kilometers per hour is divided by 3.6. Then, because maths always works in opposites, to turn meters per second into kilometers per hour, instead of dividing by 3.6, we just multiply by 3.6. So 7 times 3.6 is equal to 25.2 kilometers per hour. So this trick will just help you in real life to kind of make sure our guesses are pretty close. I know not many people know their 3.6 times tables, but it just means we could be in the ballpark. So if we get the wrong answer in a test, you'll be like, oh, that doesn't really make much sense. So the way I always kind of check that my answer is probably in the ballpark is I always visualize Usain Bolt running the 100 meters. So he averages about 38 kilometers per hour in that race, but it's only for 10 seconds. So meters per second is probably a better unit to kind of visualize what he's doing. So if I got my multiplication and divide mixed up, I know I've got to do something with 3.6, but I forgot which one to do. So I would say, okay, maybe it's 38 kilometers per hour times by 3.6. If I threw that into my calculator, that would be equal to 136.8 meters per second. But we know it took Usain Bolt 9 seconds to run 100 meters. If that's my answer, I'm saying that he runs more than 100 meters in 1 second. So that can't be right. So it's just a good way to kind of make sure that your answer is in the correct ballpark. So for this one, if you divide by 3.6, so 38 divided by 3.6, we get an answer around 10.5 meters per second. That makes sense. He ran 100 meters in about 10 seconds, so he was probably traveling at about 10 meters per second. So if you want just one hard and fast rule, kilometers per hour to meters per second, the number gets way smaller, okay? So the speed obviously doesn't change, but the number is going to get smaller. And then meters per second up to kilometers per hour, the number out the front is going to get larger. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you later.